Welcome to the very long-awaited Persona Talk video. If you guys know me, I only recently got into the series, and in the span of 6 months managed to play Persona 3 to 5 through, which made a lot of people ask me, Shen, what is your favorite Persona game? Then I decided, why not make a long, in-depth video on my experiences with it? So, warning, this video is completely opinion-based. This is what I think, and none of you should feel inclined to think the same way. Since I am talking about the Persona games, there is a heavy spoiler warning for anybody who wants to know. I still hope you guys will join me in this long, long ride, and I'll see you guys at the end. Before we get into the super duper heavy game stuff, we should go over the most important part first, my introduction to the series. Now if you go back into my channel, you can see that I used to be an Overwatch content creator, which is honestly not all that bad. What was bad about it was that the game was starting to make me increasingly more upset, and well, everyone knows what that competitive life is like.
You're a healer, bro. What are you speed boosting for? Nobody wants to Sonic, bro.
Hey. Thanks guys for listening to this guy and losing the game.
What was it that I told? Did I say everybody lose the game and get off the point and let them catch the fucking thing? No, you don't understand anything because you're a fucking idiot.
But then from the skies, a shining bright light descended in the form of another Overwatch YouTuber, Lieutenant Eddie. Yes, me being who I am is all this guy's fault. You should go and complain to him. Or actually, you can also send him support because he's actually really cool and he makes some good content. You're welcome, Eddie. We used to play Overwatch together all the time, and he picked up on my distaste and decided to shove the game into my pocket and told me,
Shen, you cannot play Overwatch until you finish Persona 5, or else I will just shit on your doorstep.
Thinking nothing of it, I decided to sit down in front of my PS4 and started the game with the mindset, this isn't going to be that long. Whatever. I was so very, very wrong. I've been aware of Persona for a while now, seeing people post about it or even hearing friends talking about it, but I normally wouldn't have played it by myself because I never showed interest in it. When I started it, I sat there for 10 hours straight before I decided to look up if the game was allowed to be streamed, and I was actually in luck. In exactly that week where I got it, all streaming restrictions were lifted, so I booted up my live stream and settled in for a grind to play through it all. I finished the game in about 12 days and exactly 100 hours, and you can God, shameless plug, watch it over on my streaming channel. I fell in love with the game, and I got so emotionally invested that when I finished it, I actually wanted to play Persona 4 and 3 right after. This was also the time when I started talking to Tyler, who really shoved me more into this hell that is Persona. Thanks, Tyler.
You're welcome, Shen.
What the f? It's actually kind of funny. I started Persona 5, then went to 4, and lastly played Persona 3. I completely played all these games backwards, and I honestly didn't mind it. All these 3 games have changed me and also made me open up to others more in ways that Overwatch just couldn't. So I think it would only be fair to dedicate a video like this to a series that pulled me out of this deep dark hole I was in, and has given me a place where it could feel like it could be myself. I'm going to be talking about the games exactly in the order that I played them. So we're going into Persona 5 first, then follow up with Persona 4, and we'll lastly talk about Persona 3. At the end, I'll give a few opinions about the spin-offs just as well. Starting off strong, we have Persona 5, a turn-based RPG that has you play as this handsome fellow right here, in an attempt to change the hearts of many foul adults with your group of equally attractive friends. If you're here and have no idea about Persona 5, I would highly recommend you either play it or go over here to watch Super Butterbun's Persona 5 for Beginners. This game was actually one of my very first introductions when it came to turn-based RPGs apart from Pokemon, so you can probably tell that when I first played it I was incredibly terrible. It was a new battle system that I had no idea how it would function, all the different abilities, buffs, debuffs, weaknesses, strengths, immunities, repels. God, Pokemon did not prepare me for this amount of strategizing. I'm not that good at video games, guys. So, since I wasn't at all fond of RPGs, I didn't really know what to expect. The first time I took a step into this gigantic world, I was instantly lost and had to put the game down and had to seek for help from my friends. I was told as a first-timer to this kind of game that it was completely normal to feel lost, but that it would all start working out the more you played. So, me, had to figure it out on my own. In a very, very long time span, of running around and being absolutely lost. When I finally got the hang of it, the rest of the game was pretty much a cakewalk. Apart from the backseaters, I decided to throw a little temper tantrum because I didn't play the game exactly how they wanted me to. I'm looking at you, Twitch chat. Yep, that's you. I still had a lot of fun and was amazed how different and refreshing this game felt, along with the pleasing aesthetics and, well, looking absolutely badass on the battlefield. I sound like a goddamn announcer. Jesus Christ. Since this is probably the thing most of you are interested in, we're going to start with it. This is heavy spoiler territory and your last chance to turn it around. I absolutely warned you, don't complain if you get spoiled. I was a person who hasn't played the previous Persona games, which means there wasn't anything for me to really expect. Now that I've caught up with Persona 3 and 4, I would have had a completely different viewpoint on Persona 5, probably even towards the negative. But since I played this first, I still think the story is good, endearing, and yet sometimes questionable in their introductions or character development. There's a lot you could grasp out of the story. For example, how easily publicity gets manipulated, if a change of heart really is illegal, and how drugging teens is a-okay when you want to interrogate them. Apparently. I don't really get it either. Even if the story has its nook and crannies of things that make you scratch your head and wonder, the characters are all diverse and bring forth different emotions based on how you look at them. This is why everyone's playstyle of the story is always different, and every person decides on a different set of characters they take with them depending on who they like more. As for me, I decided to stick with the good boys. Yeah! Now, talking about the entire way the story was told was actually genius. The fact that the beginning already includes some of the later plot points being explained honestly went by my head. You know, the entire drug part I was talking about. I honestly was very invested and sometimes forgot that the game, for 50% of it, was actually being played as a flashback from the protagonist. The lovely jokes from Sei really did remind us a lot.
Who was the one who helped you tie your shoelaces in the morning?
I'm sorry, I don't know. I also had no clue about Igor, and the entire voice actor change never even crossed my mind because I never knew it in the first place. So yes, the Igor twist was shocking to me. The game had a very well written way of making you seem like an actual criminal in the eyes of others, even Sojiro, who you may or may not dislike at the beginning of the game. Going from there, even the school treats you like you are not welcome, which is funny because in the end the teacher who talks all this smack about you suddenly wants to date you. Ooh, yikes. I actually really enjoyed a lot of the moments that happened throughout the story, like the way your team was formed and that you were able to name it whatever you liked, except that I may have abused that feature just a tiny bit. The way the characters were introduced made you incredibly cautious of them, only for them to end up being on your side. A good example is Makoto, who literally follows you around and is seen as your temporary enemy, but joins the Phantom Thieves soon after. Moments like Yusuke's scene with Anne and the Maid Watch moment were bittersweet and, oh man, those Persona awakenings are so good.
Yeah! Rip that mask off! Woo! Show your rebellion! Ride that motorcycle, queen!
There were moments though that I wish had gone on for a tiny bit longer, like the fireworks scene or even Hawaii. They just felt so wasted, and the moments could have been filled with even more riches like they had in the beach scene. Honestly though, through all the palaces, I'm probably going to have to say, like most of the people out there, that the casino was definitely by far the best one. Not only was Sei incredibly attractive, but the music was fantastic, and the entire build-up along with the bloop that came to the beginning of the game was so well put together that the moment you see the intro cutscene play again, you can't help but freak out. After Akechi's betrayal and the devastating thought that you were actually killed, the game pulls fast tricks with you and brings forth the cutscene that, in my opinion, was one of the best scenes in the entire goddamn game. This leads to my next thought. Now, I know I haven't talked about these two yet, but I actually really enjoyed Caroline and Justine's characters and was a little upset to see them go into Lavenza. But then again, Lavenza is really cute and I love her and I want to protect her with my life. I love you, Lavenza. I'm so sorry. The ending of the entire game was as grand as you could make it. The deepest parts of Mementos and the final area were challenging. The Holy Grail fight was a nice build-up, and the release of each of your party member, along with their speech, was an emotional one to boot. Fighting Fighting God was amazing, even if it took me 2 tries due to the strongest build-up attack knocking me down and making me start from the beginning. Not only that, but the final cutscene with Satana L was astounding, and the music with it was absolutely phenomenal. The entire setup of it was impactful and grand, and you actually felt like you did something meaningful. It made the rest of the game, or what was left of it, so much more important, and it makes you cherish what you had. Not only that, but the time afterwards is limited, leaving you to think over your journey before saying goodbye to the story you spent all this time into. The experience was amazing, one that will stick with me for a long time to come. So now that I went over the story, you guys are probably dying to know my opinion about each party member, right? I mean, I think so. I guess. Whatever, let's do it. The protagonist, who is also known as Akira Kurosu or Amamiya Rennow, a cute-looking boy with messy hair and glasses that make him seem mischievous at any given moment. Honestly, it's a little bit awkward talking about a silent protagonist, but then again, is he really that silent? Obviously, his entire character flips inside the metaverse, where Joker comes to play and brings out most of the MC's personality who likes to show off. It's always weird to talk about it, but for a silent protagonist, in quotation marks, the Persona MCs usually end up having a very set character they tend to follow. I could be going out on a limb here, but I think it's actually quite refreshing to have a silent protagonist who still sticks true to their identity. I guess another comparison you could take is Link, but that's stretching it just a tiny bit too far. The reason why I want to bring this up is the usual talk of why guys in the games aren't dateable, and why there are so many adults mixed into the romance option, Kawakami, Takemi, or even Oya. I think it's because that's who the protagonist is supposed to be. A delinquent after all, who doesn't care about the rules and has interest for older women. Even if I don't approve of it, it makes sense to put all of this together. Not only that, but through his chosen dialogue options, it shows that he also seems to be more of the mature side of things as well. Oh boy. Don't you think you've had enough of me talking about this beautiful boy? If you guys watched my videos or have seen my streams, you will know my absolute adoration for Ryuji. He is loud, passionate, and doesn't let anyone mess with him. Unless it's the track team, or, well, the girls. It makes me quite sad to see that he's one of the most disliked characters in Persona 5, but I can't say I don't understand why either. For a good long while I had a very strong emotional connection towards him because of all the things he's done or how his character was built. It strongly applied to myself. Loud, not the smartest, vulgar, and a punching bag for others. When people say they don't like Ryuji, I obviously don't resent them, but it does hurt me because part of me feels like they don't like me either since we share a lot of traits. The thing is, people don't even realize that I don't like Ryuji purely for the best boy jokes, or that I'd kill everyone in sight who talks bad about them. A lot of times people depict comedy or entertainment as the actual deal and treat me like some crazy fangirl when you can actually have a normal conversation with me. Another thing that people tend to forget with Ryuji is that he is a domestic abuse victim. He pretty much tells you that from the get-go, so the fact that he takes a beating so easily is actually rather sad. This is another reason why I adore this boy over everyone else in the team, a little hidden gem that mostly gets overlooked or forgotten because it's briefly mentioned and then shoved under the rug. Not only did he receive beatings from his dad, but the entire Kamoshida Palace revolved around Ryuji's abuse from the gym teacher and his test of patience. Obviously, this is where his character shines brightly, only to get completely grounded throughout the rest of the game, which is sad and kind of a wasted potential. But Persona 5 seems to have that issue with keeping their characters interesting throughout the game since they focus heavily on Makoto, Futaba, and Akechi. Now, a few of you also know that I draw the protagonist and Ryuji together a lot, mostly on Twitter or even from my Tumblr blog that I started roughly 8 months ago. But that's more of a personal want because even though I draw it, I can say one thing for certain. Ryuji isn't gay. Debating if he's bisexual or not is one thing or another. That's going way too deep into his voice lines to try and search for a hint of something else. He wants to have a girlfriend that he can protect. And that doesn't bother me. I've actually played around in my head the idea of Ryuji working with Anne or occasionally even Haru. There's also multiple scenes in game where he acts like a regular high school boy and talks about the girls, not even in a demeaning way, but it makes it believable. He doesn't over-sexualize the girls like Yusuke did in Persona 4, which I am also going to get into when we're there, and shows respect to the girls whenever the boys go onto the very iconic babe hunt missions, which has been present since Persona 3. The only thing that still bothers me to this day is the moment after Shido's palace, a scene most of you can probably relate to when the girls decide to beat Ryuji up after a heroic display on the ship. You guys have no idea how many people I discussed this scene with to get multiple opinions on it, and it usually ended up the same way. Once again, Atlas's display of using violence and beating up guys as a comedic relief, but the timing was so off-putting that the scene isn't even funny. It's just awkward and infuriating, and why in the world would the girls beat up a guy who literally just saved them and couldn't even do anything about getting blasted out? It's not like he played dead or anything, like a certain someone else in the game. Now, apart from the story purposes, let's get into the actual beat-up shadowy creatures mode. Ryuji is an absolute hitting beast when it comes to having in the party. Not only is it a strong core of why I kept him in, apart from him being my personal fave, but he's been a pretty heavy balance on my team even though I wasn't all too good at the combat at the time. He tanked damage as much as he gave out, so he was a pretty solid choice and a strong pillar to rely on. Also, I'm giving out a solid shout out to Max Middleman, Ryuji's voice actor, who did an absolute fantastic job on conveying a lot of emotions out of Ryuji's characters. 20 out of 10. Good boy from beginning to end. Oh, Anne, my lovely summer child who I want to protect and love and wish they had given her more than they gave her. If there is one character that fell off harder than Akechi did after his death, Yeah, and it's definitely Anne. There's honestly so much I want to say about Anne, but I can't. Not because I don't want to, but because in the story, Anne actually doesn't have a lot to give. She has certain moments where she is adoring, but the character they tried not to make her is, well, the character they ended up making her. A sex symbol amongst a group. If the metaverse outfit doesn't give enough information about that already, I am so uncertain about how Atlas decided to depict her because they kept writing her to hate her own appearance, but yet embraces it for some reason. It's a waste, I think, because Anne is the first lover social link, or confidant in this matter, that I actually full-on adore and love. She's headstrong, knows what she wants, and dang, she is sassy. Unlike Rise or Yukari, she isn't a center towards the main character. All her focus resides in Shiho, whom I give a large applause to. I wish we had more of Shiho. God, do I wish we had more of Shiho! I seriously wish they had done more with Anne apart from her confidant ranks. Or at least, if they ever decide to re-release the game, at least acknowledge her existence more. When it comes to in-game, I actually never really used her apart from once, which I immensely regretted because I forgot I never gave her better items or armor, so I sadly can't say much about her. I had a lot of problems liking Yusuke from the beginning of the game, which is funny because I pretty much would die for him now. I think, though, that it's an interesting way to bring his character into a group and actually make him seem like a manipulated student, which is what Madarame's palace was all about. Maybe it brought me to feel worse about his situation, since he was taken in and cared for with the mindset that it's all okay, something we see a lot nowadays. Alienated by help and only sticking to what they know. Sadly, like Anne, there is not much I can add to his character, but he definitely did bring most of the game's most iconic moments that can be remembered. The lobster scene, the church scene, and the boat scene. I do have to say that his Phantom Thief design is my favorite above the others. I wish they had given Yusuke a much more emotional impact after the palace, but at least we have his confidant to hold on to for the time being. God, you guys have probably waited for this one. I bet most of you are aware what my first impression of Makoto was, if you follow me on Twitch or watch my live streams on my streaming channel, and, well, it was pretty sour. I was very set on not liking Makoto, and was pretty much on a one-way street to hell in the Phantom's eyes. But I didn't dislike Makoto without solid reason. I think the problem I had was what the game did to her, since I did love her introduction and her courage in Persona Awakening. It's not really her fault. To hinting the true waifu, how people, whatever, like to call it. Nowadays, I love Makoto like the next, but after a while, I got sick of that term. She's an incredible character, but some people give her way too much credit when they could have done a much better job with her after Palace character. She is smart, emotionally invested, and always on the clock about everything. But then in real life, they treat her like she doesn't know what the term fun is. It was something I struggled with for a long time, how she's apparently this strong, reliable character suddenly turned into this girl that heavily relied on the protagonist, and it was upsetting to me for a good long while. I felt like they shoved her into a box, thinking that now her badass side was out of the way. Partially, I also want to blame the fandom, which is also one of the reasons why I pretty much distaste the word waifu now beyond everything. There is one saving grace amongst all of these things that made my love for Makoto blossom back up into a beautiful flower. The Persona 5 Anthology. Now, if you don't know what the anthology is, well, you're missing out, my friend. The reason why it was a saving grace for me is because in these comics, they actually write and draw Makoto in a way I wish they had treated her in-game. Not as oblivious to the outside world, and much more like a mother figure who seems very mature towards the others. Obviously, the comics are definitely there to make the experience from Persona more hilarious, but they add a new in-depth layer to the characters that I felt was missing in the game, but I'll get into that a little bit later. It made me open my eyes towards Makoto a little differently, and now I can thoroughly say I don't hate her. I actually love her now. Also, from reading her description in the Persona 5 art book, I understood her a bit more, even though I still wish they had handled it a tiny bit better. But then again, I can't complain. All in all, you go girl. You is a queen. There's about one person in the entire fandom I've met that hated Futaba, and I seriously hope it stays that way. Futaba in her own way is the most fleshed out character in the entire game, mostly because Atlas decided to go back onto their P4 route and make a palace dedicated to the character themselves. It brought some interesting elements into the game that actually felt different, and I think a lot of people can agree that Futaba's palace was one of the best. Her character is bubbly and she's absolutely adorable, yet she can destroy anyone with her words just as easily. She was pretty much from the get-go my absolute favorite female character in the team, since they decided to focus so heavily on her character and backstory. Not only that, but Erika Lindbeck, Futaba's voice actor, actually did an incredible job with her voice and really brought forth her happy yet emotional character in a stunning way. She was the key point in most of the Phantom Thieves' successes, which I think is actually nice. She didn't really use her powers for evil, per se, but instead made use of it for moments that actually mattered. Not only that, but it's very easy to compare her and Sojiro's relationship back to P4's with Nanako and Dojima. Obviously, it's drastically different here, but the fact that you get this feeling of being a family after all the bad bad stuff that has transpired, it's nice in a dark game like Persona 5. It is also one of the key points to why I couldn't romance Futaba. Not because I didn't like her, but because she felt more like a little sister to me than a romantic interest, even though her romance lines are beyond the cutest in the game. Chad pretty much lost our minds when I tested out her romance route, but I undid it. It just felt wrong to me. But yeah, Futaba is probably my favorite character in the entire game right behind Ryuji. She is absolutely adorable. They did you dirty. If you guys didn't know, Haru is actually the only character I stuck with romancing in the New Game Plus, because I absolutely adored her design and the softness that came with her character. But the problem with Haru was that she came so late into the game that you barely got to know her. If it was your first time playing Persona 5 and you didn't use a guide, you would have never been able to finish her route by the end of the game, which leaves her as the only thing everyone seems to know her by. God, you guys are all terrible. Now, Haru is honestly just a personal preference because she's cute, polite, and, well, kind of a freak in the metaverse. I can say that Haru is only that because they didn't even introduce her in a super interesting fashion, and her story makes us bring up questions that are confusing to deal with. I still to this day didn't get an answer, and I don't think we will. How did she only awaken her persona halfway? How did she even get into the metaverse? Did she seriously follow a random stray cat? Because hell no did she hear Morgana speak. Why did they ruin her moment with the most stupid discourse known in man history for drama's sake? So many questions. But unlike all of this, it's rather weird how they gave Haru so much potential, including the Destiny world scene, yet decided to cut it short with even more pain and suffering where we don't get to hear from her again. She definitely did deserve more screen time because she could have been such an interesting addition shown from a slightly crazy side behind that sweet exterior. Oh, honestly, I'm super scared of touching this topic because I feel like the Phantom is going to literally tie me up and burn me at the stake if I say anything about him. You think I'm joking? God, do I wish. If you guys know, Akechi is our sweet, loving boy who had his entire plan ruined by a stack of delicious pancakes. Now let's get the main point from Akechi out of the way, that it was seriously not hard to realize that he was the antagonist from the very beginning. But at the same time, I am not even upset about it, because Persona 5's spiel, compared to Persona 4, isn't who did it, but more how was it done. Akechi has from the beginning been the Phantom Thieves' biggest enemy, and the fact that he would figure out it was them was only a matter of time. To say I think he's cool is an understatement. Akechi was a good villain, acting nice and lawful only to end up being this manipulated force of evil who wanted to gain all the attention by solving a crime that was made up in the first place. But there is only one issue I have with Akechi, and it's been a problem ever since I've created the Persona chat in my Discord. The people that protect Goro Akechi for his actions. Now, it's definitely stupid to judge people based on their opinion about a video game character, but at the same time, I'm actually frightened of the comments I see based around him, or the mass amount of people that wish him and Joker did the horizontal tango, if you know what I mean. I'm serious, guys. You wouldn't believe how many people I've seen defending Akechi and going on about how he's a precious boy who did nothing wrong and he didn't deserve anything he got. He killed people. He is a criminal. It doesn't matter if he was manipulated or had issues. He is still a bad guy with blood on his hands and he didn't regret it. He's a damn psychopath, and the fact that people use his pretty boy high school exterior to excuse his behavior literally scares me to death. You can like a character based on the way they're written. Yes, he's an incredibly endearing character with a super interesting background and a motive that people could relate to, but it's not something to be excused. Unlike other people, I believe his death, I say with regret because we all know he's probably going to come back thanks to his popularity, was one of the most important parts for Akechi's character's arc. It was his moment. He stood in front of the Phantom Thieves who used their "friendship is the power of magic" speak and stood his ground to go against them even at the face of death. And I honestly love that, since you don't always need a villain who suddenly sees the light just because he's been defeated. Akechi was in the mindset of revenge even after he closed off his clone from the protag and the gang because he didn't want for them to succeed. He knew that they would bring down Shido, and that was the only thing he wanted. One thing that did bother me though was that pretty much after Akechi's death, he was completely forgotten by the main cast, which is incredibly strange since he was one of their biggest motivational pushes. Straight up Control Alt deleted. Akechi? Akechi whomst? So sorry, I don't know her. Anyway, I really love Akechi as an antagonist. I just wish people would understand that liking a character for their writing is okay, but excusing their actions and saying I would do the same just isn't. Oh, Morgana, you make me want to pet you, but also throw you out of the nearest window with some things that you do in the game. Of course, Morgana is the mascot character of P5, so we have to make him cute, sassy, and a full-fledged annoyance throughout the game's slice of life section. You all know what I'm talking about. All those spicy maymays y'all talk about all the time. I did that right? I'm cool now. There's a few issues I had with Morgana throughout the entire game that made him on this tipping scale between liking and disliking. Since the very beginning of the game, he showed a certain rudeness that made it slightly annoying to deal with, along with the unnecessary drama he sometimes caused. I'm looking at you, scene before Kumaras Palace. When you literally erase all the bad writing from Atlas's part though, Morgana is actually a much more likable character than Teddy by a long shot. His unrequited love for Anne is sad, Ella's kind of strange, and his constant problems of trying to figure out where he's from or what his purpose is comes as a common problem from the mascot characters, except for P3, where everyone has themselves figured out, for the most part. Morgana was actually a strong spot in my party for a long time. He is a reliable healer and definitely stood strong in battle. Thank God Futaba took over his navigator role, or by the time I finished the game, I would have murdered that cat for sure. And that was pretty much my view on the main cast. Now your guys' question is probably who my favorite confidant was in the game, because we have so many great characters to choose from, like PayPal scammer, politics, probably illegal, and mommy issues. But there's definitely one that trumps all of them for me, Mishima. Now hear me out before you grab your pitchforks and torches, because here's exactly why I love him so much. Obviously, when you meet Mishima in school, he is the kid that got silently abused by Kamoshida along with Shiho. Unlike her though, he wasn't able to keep it a secret from the ever so clever becoming Phantom Thieves, and decided that he would finally do something with himself and create the ultimate weapon that would cause you to grind hours upon hours in the depth of mementos. The ever so helpful and totally not morally confusing fan site. It is incredibly important to do Mishima's confidant, even if it's not for the characters. His boost up ability allows your backup party members to level alongside your normal party, so you're not locked into using the same characters, which is incredibly helpful. At rank 1, it's automatic, and at rank 7, he boosts your all-around XP gain, so you definitely do not want to pass up at least this opportunity. Apart from him being incredibly useful, he is a perfect copy of what Akechi is, if he hadn't forced himself to change. Both Mishima and Akechi were desperately searching for recognition to the point where they would deceive others and use the growth to their own advantage. But because you spend your time with the lovely mess that is our precious Yuki, he wouldn't have noticed the errors in his ways and changed himself. Obviously, he got more brave, but he still resides to be the Phantom Thieves' biggest supporter, and it shows at the end scene of the game when he makes everyone join him in. Seriously, it's such a charming moment, and I regretted not maxing him in my second playthrough because some weird random dude starts cheering, and it takes off so much from the moment that it feels lame in a way. So yeah, Mishima is definitely my favorite confidant out of the entire game, with great impact even if you do not realize it. I wish I had found the same amount of love in other confidants. They usually strayed off to rely on some outside source that caused their turmoil, and it became all about them. The only areas I really didn't mind that was with Yusuke and Futaba, because it really drove their characters to change and to act. I couldn't help but be uninterested when going through Chihaya's, Oya's, or even Haru's confidant, because so little happens in them that it doesn't endear you in a way that it could. Yui's was definitely an upgrade to the others. Plus, Takemi's was just as interesting. Kawakami gets a pass from me too, but that's mostly because I adore their designs along with their characteristics, and it strengthened the characters in a very, very obvious way. Don't even get me started on Yoshida. I know he's a nice guy, but God, did I not care about politics through it all. Along with the good also comes the bad, and then there is a lot of those moments the more you start focusing on the game for a second time, so I'm going to list off a very few nitpicky problems I have with the entire system and storyline. Number 1, character development falls short. As you guys have already heard me whine about it in some of the characters' opinions, the game has an issue of giving a character a spotlight in the palace and then treats them like that was their last moment, and now they're just brain dead who don't know their right shoe from their left. Number 2, do you guys remember those guys from Shinjuku? You know, those two stereotypical gay guys who kidnapped Ryuji, and for some reason we decided to stand there like idiots who suddenly lost every muscle in our body because we didn't help? Yeah, those were a big issue for me, since it felt like an honest-to-God joke that Atlas decided to put two very obvious homosexual people in the game that end up being predators towards kids. Twice too! Atlas, what the hell? 3, the most unnecessary drama that occurred more than once really could have been fleshed out a lot more, and would have driven the story further more smoothly and not as clanky. 4, like I said before, the confidants. I know that the word confidant means a person with whom one shares a secret or private matter, trusting them not to repeat it to others. And I feel like that might have been the problem with me. Of course, the protagonist is a lot more mature and deals with a lot more mature stuff with the people he meets, but it just feels dull and lame. 5. God, I know people have personal preference, but the amount of people that shove it straight in your face and try and bring drama to every situation into the chat have gotten me right sick of the fandom. I know it isn't much of the game's fault. Just kidding. It very much is. So we pretty much set up a rule now to, well, not do that. We're a community who likes to have fun. Thank you very much. 6. I felt like the Phantom Thieves could have had a lot more moments together in different areas of the game. It felt wasted to have certain events run short, like Destiny Land or even the trip to Hawaii. It all felt so rushed, and just the tiniest amount amount of connection could be made through it. I sincerely wish that if they ever decide to re-release Persona 5 that they add a little bit more of familiarity to the group. The only real moment I could feel really nice about was the school festival scene with Mishima and Ryuji and the protag. That is honestly one of my favorite scenes in the entire game. 7. Kumaras Palace. I don't know if Atlus just wanted to make the most annoying palace in the entire existence of Persona, but the entire puzzle section was so terrible and so stretched out, it almost felt like you were willingly stepping on Lego blocks only to get out of there. Sorry to anyone in the comment section who likes this palace. Okay, but that's pretty much enough of being nitpicky about the game. As a first-time player for the Persona franchise, I can't really complain since I actually cried like a baby when the ending finally came around. It doesn't matter that there were certain problems in the game that could have been handled better. It is still a game you stuck your 80 to 100 hours into, and you got to know all these characters that helped you on your journey and made you feel like you belong. The emotional impact is still there, and it's still sad to see them drive away, knowing that the story is over. Now obviously we have a lot of stuff planned for the future because we all know that Atlus is going to throw those spin-off games our way, but they're honestly not unwelcome in my eyes. Right now, we're currently on the path to getting Persona Dancing Star Night and Moon Knight. Announcements for PQ2 were also in the mix, and maybe, just maybe, we'll receive some arena games as well. I am pretty thankful for this game coming into my life, because even though I said I would never play it, well, here I am making a long video about how much I actually love the series. It also brought me happiness that not a lot of other people can understand, but I'll get into that sometime else. Hey guys, welcome to the end of the video. This is part 1 of 3, because I decided to actually split this up and make this a little bit more accessible for viewers, so here's Persona 5 first. It took me entire 3 months to work on this video, so if I could have some feedback and some opinions in the comments, that would be pretty awesome. Don't forget to subscribe and, you know, just follow me on Twitter and on Twitch because I'm very active on there, and just any form of support would be great because I've been working super hard on this video, and hopefully the Persona 4 video will come out really soon after. Thanks for watching, guys.